Mullion Farm was located near Dixie Springs off Highway 51. A large granite monument marks the spot of the murder today. Many strange things have happened in McComb's past, but nothing compares to the bizarre prophecy of David Stephenson in 1939.
I was a doctor, and on March 15, 1939, I had just gotten home from making my rounds at the Macomb Infirmary when I received a call from the chief of police. He asked if I would come to the McColgan Hotel to examine someone. He said he would meet me at the entrance on Front Street. I picked up my medical bag and left at once. When I reached the hotel, Police Chief Brumfield was pacing back and forth by the front door. After greeting me, he explained why he called me out that night. He said he had found a young man standing on the overhead bridge that spans the railroad tracks. The man was leaning over the railing and was pointing to something down below. He was talking to himself and seemed very agitated. He kept repeating something about dragons and rabbits that made no sense at all. At first, the chief thought he was drunk, but he could not smell liquor on his breath. The man admitted he was confused and frightened. I asked him his name and where he was from. He said he was just passing through Macomb and had a room at the hotel. Chief Brumfield walked with him back to his room, and when he got into the light, he could see the man was pale and very unsteady on his feet. The chief called me to take a look at him. The chief knocked on the young man's door, no response. He knocked again, and finally the door opened. We saw a short, well-groomed man, approximately 26 years of age, standing in the doorway. He was wearing an expensive suit, and his shoes were cleaned and polished. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and a bow tie was sticking out of his coat pocket. When I introduced myself and shook his hand, I could tell he had no fever, but his hand was wet and clammy. Chief Brumfield had already called me to check out the information the stranger had given him on the bridge. There were no warrants out for a David Stephenson from Champaign, Illinois, and there was no arrest record for this person. I had a brief conversation with the hotel guest. He told me his name was David Stephenson. When I asked if I could examine him, he readily agreed. His eyes were still glazed, pupils not dilated, no evidence of an optical hemorrhage, ear passages normal. His facial features seemed normal as well, and showed no evidence of a stroke. I checked his blood pressure and reflexes, both normal. Although his speech was not slurred, it was fast, broken, and he seemed very frightened. While I was examining David, the chief walked around a small room, looking over his personal belongings. A medium-sized alligator suitcase lay open on the bed. Sitting on top of his clothes was a folded Times-Picayune newspaper and a couple of torn tickets from the New Orleans racetrack. David had already placed his hairbrush and razor on the sink in his room. I pulled a chair next to David and started asking some questions. I was satisfied he was in no physical crisis, but I wanted to know what state he was in mentally. What happened on the bridge, I asked. His eyes closed as if he were searching for answers. He said he came to town on the early afternoon train on his way to Champaign, Illinois. Before he got to Macomb, he decided to break his trip and stay overnight at the McColgan Hotel. he checked into the Hotel McColgan and went up to his room. Looking out the window, he saw the overhead bridge and was strangely drawn to it. We both listened as he explained how he walked to the bridge, and as he started up the ramp, he began to feel dizzy and started to see things like he was having visions. I asked him if he'd ever had visions before, and he answered no. He said he clearly saw an airplane crash underneath the bridge. When we expressed surprise, he said he saw that airplane crash just as clear as he saw the two of us sitting next to him in that chair. When we left David Stephenson, I was convinced that he was delusional. We dismissed the vision of the plane crash, but we could not make sense out of his ravings about the dragon and the rabbit. We pieced together a sentence. He kept saying over and over, "The dragon cannot catch the rabbit escapes leaving strands of hair, the color of mother of pearl on petal flowers as though it never really happened." I offered him a sedative to help him sleep, but David Stephenson refused it, and we said our goodbyes. The next day, Chief Brumfield received a telegram that a body had been found on top of a coal car in the south yard at the Jackson, Mississippi station. A receipt for a night in the McColgan Hotel was found in his pocket. We assumed that sometime before daylight, David Stephenson left his room and returned to the bridge where he jumped to his death. I did not think about him after that, but on March 15, 1943, an Air Force plane on maneuvers from Shreveport, Louisiana, carrying 2 pilots, suffered engine failure over Macomb. The trainer plane crashed underneath the overhead bridge. The 2 pilots bailed out, one died, the other was injured, and David Stephenson's prophecy had come true. On December 7, 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. David Stephenson had jumped to his death after trying to warn us. The Emperor's dragon had emerged, and the United States entered World War II.